So I prepared this lab just for the webinar. So what is Azure Sentinel? Azure Sentinel is a cloud-native SIEM, system information and event management, with capabilities of SOAR, security orchestration and automatic responses. This is your bird's eyes across the enterprise. So it's a really powerful tool and that uses built-in AI, for example, to help analyze large volumes of data across all enterprise and fast. So it includes a lot of built data connectors. So it's very easy to onboard all your security products, and you can have only one pane of glass where you can see all your alerts, all your incidents, and investigate everything directly from this console, Azure Sentinel. So the only global requirements that you need before you can deploy Azure Sentinel is you only have an active subscription in Azure, for example. And there are some free lots that you can deploy in order to deploy Azure Sentinel. For example, the lots that are for some products built in Microsoft are free. So the first thing is that when you deploy Azure Sentinel is empty. So the first thing that you need to do is deploy or implement some data connectors. So for example, I have here 116 connectors available and I have 7 connected. So for example, in this integration, I wanted to show you how to integrate Microsoft 365 Defender, but actually right now is the data connector that is in preview. So for example, if I want to implement this one that includes the complete suite of Microsoft 365 Defender, that includes Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, Defender for Office 365, and the CAP solution on Microsoft that I mentioned before, that is Cloud App Security, that is only in preview. If I want to deploy this connector, there you see that the only one connector that is available right now is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. That is also apart. So the way I did it, if you want to do it once, if you is that I deploy all the connectors separately, and you can see. Let me show you right now. For example, I deploy Microsoft Cloud App Security. I deploy Microsoft Defender for Endpoint apart, Defender for Identity, Defender for Office 365. And the things with data connectors is that it's very easy, and it's one of the best things about this cloud native solution is that you can onboard and deploy all the things and connect all your infrastructure with just a few clicks. For example, I did it for just the demo, but I include also the security events of a Windows Server, the Windows Server directly with just a few clicks. And if in Azure, the VM directly, you with just a few clicks you can deploy it. So, for example, let me show you how can you deploy, for example, a data connector. If I want to implement a data connector, then you see that, for example, there is related content. There is workbooks, queries, analytics rules, templates, and what they are. So the workbooks are like graphics where you all the raw data you want to see it like anomalies or in a graphic directly. This is a workbook. So and all the alerts, I can say, for example, oh, if there is an alert, it's gonna be like that. I'm gonna show you in the overview how it's gonna see how we can see incidents and alerts directly. So Microsoft directly, when you implement a data connector, there are some recommended workbooks in some data connector, not all of them. There are some query samples where you integrate all your alerts or your logs and that kind of things. And there are some analytics templates, for example. For example, I only using right now this with severity high. That is using is that if they detect in Cloud App Security, it's going to create an incident directly in Azure Sentinel. So it's as simple as create the rule, go to the rule, modify the rule as if you need, and if you want to implement, there are some tools of SOAR, automated response, but this is apart directly. And if you want to create it, you can review all the template and let's create it. But if creating is gonna do anything. So this is the most important thing of, when you begin using, for example, Azure Sentinel. The first thing is that you need to connect all your data sources that you want to analyze. And let's see, for example, Office 365. there's a lot of activity in this deployment. For example, I link the Office activity for SharePoint, the Office activity for Exchange, the Office activity for Teams. So you see that, for example, there are 7 workbooks related to this data connector, 3 queries, analytics rules, templates, but they are not only related, for example, to Microsoft. If you want, for example, to include Fortinet, for example, there is a data connector to use all the loads, bring all the loads so that Fortinet has. Palo Alto, for example, McAfee, and there's a lot of connector that can be used directly here. So, when you have all your data connectors included, it's a start to bring all the loads for those ads. For example, in this demo, I made these alerts manually, all for the event, but when I include the data connector of Cloud App Security, I saw directly an event. So alerts is when, for example, a user failed to log in based on a policy that the company deployed. So based on alerts, you can create incidents. So for example, let's see here. So based on in an alert, for example, Azure Active Directory failed to log in is an alert with severity high. It creates an incident. So in the incident panel, we can all investigate about all this incident. We can assign this incident, for example, to me. Let's see the status of the incident. If you solve the incident, you can, for example, close it. Or if you see, oh, the rule is no, it puts like medium. But if you after you see the description, after you read the category of initial access, for example, based on Mitra, is you can, for example, level up. For example, oh no, this is no medium. This is, for example, a high incident, and you can change it in that way. So the main benefit of directly of using the Azure Sentinel is that you can see all your security products, not only security, for example, all your infrastructure. Let's see, for example, I include security events of Microsoft Windows Server, and I see here, for example, all the security events with a query. After all this information, that I see here, for example, in this graphic, is based on queries. So, for example, if you include the data connector Office 365 or Office Defender for Endpoint, you can see, for example, here, it logs. So you can make a query that is based on KQL, is the language directly from Microsoft, use a query language. It's something similar to SQL for making queries. And so, for example, let me show you the overview. If I want to see, let's see, for example, alerts. Example, all the alerts are bringing together is that all this query based on the alert that I create. So security alert where provider name is this one based on a schedule, or provider name customer alert rule based on an alert that I create before. So this is one of the things that you need to know when you're using, for example, Azure Sentinel. There are a lot of more things, for example, hunting. If you want, for example, let me see if all the data sources that I have is there are something similar to, for example, all across the kill chain in security, or all the base in the Mitra attack directly. So, for example, recognize and initial access, execution, persistent, privilege access directly, credential access, and that kind of things. I can see this. This is the description about the hunting directly and the query based. All this in Azure Sentinel is based on KQL. So I can run this query if some things in my data sources, for example, in Defender for Endpoint, for example, Office 365, match with this policy that is failed service logon attempt by user account, is gonna be a result directly. So there you see that based on the queries I run, there is no results, for example. So there are more things in here in Azure Sentinel. For example, there is notebooks. If you want to use threat intelligence directly here, you can implement it here, integrating, for example, with Jupyter Networks, and make some codes to hunting directly in Azure Sentinel. So More things about this, there is also a whole apart in automation that is making, you can make some playbooks and make some automated responses. There are so enabled playbooks by default, but you can also deploy a playbook by yourself. In this case, if you want to use a playbook, you need to deploy Azure Logic Apps. That is a complete service apart.
And before you move forward, Enrique,
Yeah,
let's take one step back and like let everyone know something here. You know
yeah,
that what we're showing you is Sentinel. This is a CM, so this is a way for us to centralize all logs, as Enrique has been showing and has been explaining. But it's good for you to know that we're not pretending to replace one if you already have one. If you already
yeah,
have like a CM and you have Logarithm, you have Alien Vault, you have Elastic, we can actually integrate what you have with Sentinel and take advantage of it for your on-prem environment or take advantage of it for your cloud environment. So the idea here is that, as you're seeing here, we have a whole lot of features that have been evolving like for the past few years. Sentinel is not new. Sentinel has been on the market for almost 4 years already, and we've been working with it since it was on preview on 2017. So as you see, it has a whole lot of features that you can take advantage of, and we want you to understand like this is the potential that you have. You don't have to use everything at, like right from scratch, but what Enrique is showing you, it's what you can actually accomplish at some point. If you just need like part of it, there's a way for us to implement just like part of the CM. You can
yeah,
actually have a POC and start testing part of it. Whatever makes sense to your environment, it's the way that we want you to actually see this. It's not that you have to actually take it as a whole. If you need
yeah.
part of it or if you need to integrate it with what you have, we're able to help you there.
Also, there is a data connector that is CEF, Common Event Format. It's the common format that use the CM, for example, Splunk, Alien Vault, for example, and you can integrate, for example, all the logs that you have, for example, in your Azure CM, for example, Splunk, and you can integrate all the data that you have there and upload it directly to the cloud. So it's that as that Rene said. So it's not only that you need to take it take it as a whole. You can, for example, take it some part, use a part in the Azure Sentinel, use the automized responses, take the part of incidents, and use, for example, also your environment on premise. So even I think there's a a complete a complete data connector for Splunk. I think so. So if there's no directly, I think directly for CEF, you can connect your, for example, your solution. Also, there are solutions that are in preview that this is whole apart. For example, Google Platform, McAfee, some more previews are here. Qualys is very used right now. So this is what I wanted to take. So Azure Sentinel is a really powerful tool that use a lot of AI to centralize and make alerts based on all the data that you have. For example, that you see here, that the last 24 hours, I have more than 11,000 events. So imagine analyzing all that data manually is a disaster. So for example, the last 24 hours, 48 hours, I have more than 25,000 events, and automatically it creates 8 alerts. And based on those alerts, it says like, hey, based on that on those 8 alerts, I have 10 incidents because directly it didn't appear, for example, 2 alerts. It created directly an incident. So directly you can go to incident, for example, multiple fail use logon attempt. You can see what happened there. So a table policy that I created on Cloud Security that you see here, I can see, for example, go directly to Microsoft Cloud App Security, and that's one of the benefits of using, for example, a solution integrated with Microsoft. That, for example, if I want to investigate the incident directly, I can click here. I can go directly to Cloud App Security panel and investigate directly what happened there. So I don't know if there are any more questions about Azure Sentinel. It's just a demo about how Azure Sentinel works. So now And I think that's everything for my part. So thanks for listening, and I hope the topics covered here help your organization build the next hybrid workforce. Now I will leave you directly with Nestor, who is going to tell you more things.